You can be busy every day, notifications buzzing, tabs open, plans half made, and still feel like life is on pause. It feels like you are preparing to start organizing, researching, optimizing, but never actually stepping forward. From the outside, everything looks fine. Inside, it feels like you are standing at the edge, watching, waiting. Here is the quiet truth. Many people feel stuck, not because they are lazy, unmotivated, or broken. They feel stuck because a part of them never fully made the shift from safety to responsibility, from being cared for to choosing a direction. This is what it looks like when someone grows older in years, but not quite in posture. Adult age, adult options, but a mindset still facing the shore. By the end of this video, you will understand why this pattern is so common today and how it quietly shapes your money, your work, your relationships, and your sense of independence, often without you realizing it. You see it everywhere once you know how to look. People with adult bodies, adult voices, adult responsibilities on paper, but a way of living that feels paused. They wait for the right mood, the right sign, the right moment, or someone else's approval before they move. Decisions feel heavy, commitment feels risky, and staying where things are familiar feels safer than stepping into the unknown. This isn't about intelligence, character, or effort. Many of these people are thoughtful, capable, and self-aware. They can talk for hours about what they want to do, what they could become, or what they plan to start someday. The problem isn't a lack of insight. It's a hesitation to cross an invisible line. Psychology noticed this long before screens, apps, or online distractions existed. Long before anyone blamed algorithms or dopamine. There has always been a recognizable pattern of people who grow up physically but remain psychologically tied to a younger way of being. And here's the reassuring part. Almost everyone carries a version of this tendency somewhere inside themselves. It shows up in small ways in certain areas of life. The difference is whether it stays a phase or quietly becomes a lifestyle. Imagine someone who keeps every door open, not because they are curious, but because closing one feels final. They move from interest to interest, job to job, idea to idea, always staying light enough to leave at any moment. Comfort matters more than direction. Short-term relief feels safer than long-term effort, and uncertainty is managed by avoiding decisions that cannot be undone. Emotionally, this looks like a deep preference for what feels good now, and a quiet fear of what might demand something later. Responsibility feels heavy, not because it is impossible, but because it threatens the sense of freedom that comes from having no fixed path. So life becomes a series of almost choices, close enough to feel busy, but never solid enough to require commitment. Modern life makes this pattern incredibly easy to live inside. There is always another distraction, another escape, another small reward that feels like movement. You can feel productive, connected, and entertained without ever really stepping forward. And this is important. This pattern does not appear overnight. It is built slowly, layer by layer, through experiences, relationships, and environments that quietly teach the nervous system what to avoid and what to cling to. Early emotional safety is not a mistake. It is necessary. In the beginning, feeling protected, soothed, and held together by someone else is exactly what allows a human being to survive and form a sense of self. Safety is where confidence is supposed to grow from, not something to escape. The problem begins when that sense of safety never changes shape. Long before logic develops, the nervous system is already learning what feels calm and what feels threatening. It learns where relief comes from, where tension fades, and where discomfort begins. Those lessons settle deep, far below conscious thought. If safety always means staying close, being taken care of, or avoiding risk, the body remembers that. Even years later, unfamiliar responsibility can trigger the same tension as danger. Independence does not feel exciting. It feels unsafe. So the system quietly pulls back toward what it knows. Over time, this stops being a temporary phase and becomes a way of living. Choices are filtered through comfort. Growth is delayed until it feels perfectly safe, which it never quite does. From the outside, the person keeps aging, keeps accumulating years, but inside, they are still oriented toward protection rather than direction. This is one of the quiet ways someone can grow older without fully growing up. Growing into independence usually requires a bridge, not a speech, not advice, but a living example that shows how effort turns into something solid. Someone who embodies the idea that struggle is not a punishment, it is a path. That guidance does not have to come from a specific role or identity. It comes from presence, consistency, and being visibly engaged with life. When that bridge is missing, the outside world can feel cold and unwelcoming. Responsibility does not look like freedom, it looks like being left alone. Work feels like pressure without purpose. Commitment feels like loss rather than gain. So staying close to what feels familiar becomes the safer option, even if it slowly limits growth. This is where many people get stuck without realizing it. They are not refusing adulthood, they just never saw a version of it that looked worth stepping into. Without a bridge, independence feels like a cliff, not a road. And it makes perfect sense that someone would hesitate before crossing. So they wait, they prepare, they stay near the edge, telling themselves they will move when it feels right. Calm on the surface, capable in theory, but quietly unsure whether the other side leads to something meaningful or just more weight to carry. For most of human history, growing up was not a private decision. It was marked. At some point, the world clearly said, "This chapter is over, now you go." These transitions were not about drama or spectacle. They served an emotional purpose, signaling that childhood comfort had an ending and a different way of living was expected to begin. Once that line was crossed, there was no confusion about where someone stood. The message was simple: you are no longer waiting. You are now responsible for carrying yourself forward. That clarity mattered more than the ritual itself. Modern life rarely offers anything like that. There is no single moment that demands psychological adulthood. You can keep many options open, delay commitments, and move through life without ever being forced to choose a direction. Nothing officially ends, so nothing truly begins. In place of real transitions, we get artificial ones. Endless entertainment, online worlds, and short bursts of achievement that feel like progress without requiring change. They provide movement without risk, reward without responsibility. And without realizing it, many people spend years moving through these substitute passages, never quite hearing the signal that says, now it is time to step forward. When guidance is missing, it is usually not because someone meant harm. More often, it is absence, not malice. Emotional absence leaves a person without a steady internal compass, without a clear sense of how to orient themselves when things get difficult. No one showed them in a lived and consistent way how to stay engaged when effort stops feeling rewarding. Ambition and responsibility do not grow from pressure alone. They grow from belief. You have to believe that adulthood leads somewhere worth going, that the weight you carry turns into meaning rather than exhaustion. Without that belief, long-term goals feel abstract, and commitment feels like a gamble with no clear upside. This is where modern anxiety quietly takes root. Work feels endless. Planning feels overwhelming. The future feels heavy, not inviting. So people postpone decisions, avoid long-term responsibility, and stay flexible just in case something better appears. Not because they are careless, but because stepping forward feels like entering a life they never learned to trust. And this brings us back to the central pattern again. Growing older is automatic. Growing into direction is not. Without a sense that adulthood offers something real, many people remain near the edge, capable, intelligent, and busy, yet still facing the shore rather than the open water. Overprotection rarely comes from control for its own sake. It usually grows out of love, fear, or quiet loneliness. Caring too much can feel like staying close, stepping in early, smoothing the path so someone never has to feel overwhelmed or hurt. From the inside, it feels kind, even responsible. But when shielding becomes constant, something important never gets learned. Resilience does not come from being kept safe forever. It comes from making choices, facing consequences, failing in manageable ways, and discovering that recovery is possible. When those experiences are removed, confidence never fully forms. Decision-making stays fragile. Responsibility feels unfamiliar. Slowly, a pattern settles in. One side feels needed, useful, emotionally relevant. The other side feels protected, supported, relieved of pressure. No one announces this agreement. It develops quietly, reinforced by comfort and familiarity. Leaving would mean discomfort for both, so staying feels easier, even when it limits growth. This is where care begins to resemble a cage, not because anyone intended it, but because safety was never meant to be permanent. The longer it lasts, the harder it becomes to imagine life without it. Independence starts to feel like betrayal rather than maturity. And this is often the most emotionally charged point of the pattern. Growth would require disappointing someone, tolerating guilt, and stepping into uncertainty. So many people pause here, not out of weakness, but because the cost of moving forward suddenly feels very real. When you step back and look at all the pieces together, a clear picture forms. This is not a collection of personal failures. It is a pattern shaped by safety that never loosened, guidance that never fully arrived, and a world that no longer insists on growing up. The result is a generation of people who are capable, informed, and busy, yet strangely unanchored. This pattern reaches into every part of life. Work becomes something to endure rather than build with. Money is spent to relieve stress instead of creating stability. Relationships stay tentative because real commitment feels irreversible. Even meaning starts to feel distant, like something other people discover, but never quite you. Here is the uncomfortable truth. The more ways society offers to escape discomfort, the rarer psychological adulthood becomes. When relief is always available, responsibility feels optional. When nothing forces a decision, choosing a direction feels unnecessary. And when comfort is endless, growth feels like a risk rather than a reward. This is why the issue feels so widespread today. Not because people are weaker, but because the environment quietly rewards staying unfinished. Growing older happens automatically. Growing into responsibility now requires conscious effort. And that shift, from drifting to choosing, is the real crisis at the center of modern life. Noticing this pattern is not a verdict, it is a doorway. Seeing it simply means you are aware enough to pause and ask a different question. And that alone already sets you apart from drifting on autopilot. Maturity is not about becoming rigid, serious, or joyless. It is responsibility paired with freedom. It is choosing direction instead of comfort, and discovering that effort can actually widen your life rather than shrink it. So the real question is not whether you stayed too long near the shore. It is whether you are curious about what might happen if you take one step away from it. In the next video, we will look more closely at the psychological profile behind this pattern and explore practical ways people begin to move forward, not perfectly, but deliberately, into a life that feels more grounded, independent, and their own